Hi everyone. So if you've been watching my last few videos and you've been watching my Instagram stories, you'll have noticed that lately I've really been making the habit of getting out and taking photos every day and doing a lot more street photography as well. But I've been getting out every day and taking photos for, I'd say, about the last 2 weeks now, and I just thought I would reflect on what I've noticed and how my photography has changed in those 2 weeks. People will often get bored of their own home city. If you live in a small place like me, like Carlisle for example, it's very easy to think, well, there's nothing interesting to photograph around here. You know, you get accustomed to the same things. So if you're into photography and you live in a small place like this, then you might not be getting out and taking photos as much as you would like to, because you have it in your mind that there's nothing interesting to photograph. But if you just actually make the effort to go out with your camera and make that a habit that you do on a regular basis, then it's amazing what you soon begin to notice and how much inspiration you quickly begin to find. I used to think the same thing here, and just these last 2 weeks as I've been going out every day, I'm noticing so much, and I'm finding inspiration in places that you'd never think you'd find inspiration to take photographs. You know, whether it's just complementary colours or shapes, patterns, geometric lines, the way things line up with each other to create a nice pattern, or someone you just find interesting, or an interaction between people, or it can be absolutely anything, and I'm finding that inspiration everywhere now. My favourite photographer is Alex Reb. I'm absolutely amazed by his photography. He works with colour very well, which is what I like, and his photos have so much depth and there's so much going on in them, but yet they all look so beautiful, and you'd almost think they were staged. Everything just fits perfectly together, even though there's so much going on, and every photo tells a story, and it's so interesting. And even just the individual photos tell a really interesting story, but then you put all those photos together and they give you a real sense of a place and a real feeling and a real story. I've got his Istanbul book, for example, and looking at all the images in there, they really give you a sense for what Istanbul is like, and not in like a typical like touristy way. Just like the couple of places that you might go if you're a tourist. They give you a real sense of what everyday life is like there, what it's like to actually live in Istanbul, what the people are like. And again, that's really what I want to be doing with my travel photography, really giving you a true sense of a place. So for example, by getting out every day just around my hometown, I'm slowly building up a portfolio of images of Carlisle, which if you put them together, you'll get a real sense of what Carlisle is like. And I used to look at Alex Webb's photos and I used to think, how does he even do that? How does he get photos like that, where there's so much going on but yet it looks so beautiful and everything complements each other so brilliantly? And it's because he's honed his skill over years and by going out and taking photos all the time. And I've noticed just in myself, as I'm going out and taking photos every day, I'm noticing a lot more. I'm getting a lot more inspiration. I'm noticing things that I wouldn't perhaps have noticed before. I'm able to take photos that I perhaps wouldn't have taken before, just because I'm developing my eye and I'm just finding so much inspiration. So I was walking past a retail park the other day, for example, and I'm walking past Dunelm Mill, which has a very clear, vibrant green sign and logo. And I noticed the bush in front of me was also very green and vibrant, and these colours complemented each other really well between the foreground and the background. And okay, the subject matter isn't the most interesting thing in the world, it's a retail park, but to be able to notice things like that in a retail park, it shows you how my eye is looking for these things more and more, and I'm noticing these things more, and I'm finding sort of beauty in just everyday things. And if I can notice things like that by walking past a retail park, then that shows that I'm more likely to notice that in something more interesting and something more beautiful, and then I'm more likely to get more interesting photos in the future. Even when I went to the supermarket the other day, again had my camera with me, and I was just walking through the car park towards the supermarket, and all of a sudden I noticed these leading lines and the geometry of the shelter I was walking under, and it was Sainsbury's, which that was difficult for me to say, So there were two vibrant orange signs side by side, with this leading line going straight down towards the supermarket. And suddenly I found that interesting. Before I was getting out and taking photos, I'd have just walked straight down there and not thought anything of it. But because I'm taking photos all the time, I'm noticing things like that just in everyday life. In a supermarket car park, for God's sake. Now you might look at that photo and think, that's a supermarket car park, that is a boring, uninteresting, crappy photo. Or some of you might kind of appreciate what I saw there, and appreciate the leading lines and the pockets of colour that are there. But regardless, it doesn't matter if you like the photo or not. It just shows how my creative eye is becoming more and more accustomed to these things and noticing more and more. And over time, that's just going to help me get better and better and better and better as a photographer. So eventually, I am going to be getting those great photographs which will go into my portfolio and things. When you look at professional photographers' work, you're only seeing their very best. Now, by doing these vlogs and my Instagram stories and my blog, I'm doing something a bit different in that I'm showing you, pretty much almost all of my photos on a daily basis. So you're seeing the not so good as well. So not all of these photos are going to go into my portfolio, obviously, but I just want to show them so I can show you guys what I'm noticing and how I'm developing, because I hope that it will inspire you to get out and take more photos as well. When I was in Worthing with my mum recently, if I'd been there in the past, I'd probably just walked around with my mum, and I might have had my camera with me, but I would not have taken as many photos. I would have probably just waited until sunset and then found somewhere nice to photograph the sunset and get my tripod out and properly take some photos that way. But now I'm taking photos all the time. And when I was in Worthing recently, I took so many photos just of everyday things that were there. Every little thing that I noticed that I found interesting, I take photos. Now, I'm not just taking photos for the sake of taking photos, but if I find something interesting, I'll take a photo. And like I say, I'm getting so much inspiration in just everyday things. And by taking so many photos in Worthing, I feel I've really, just in that one short day, I feel like I've kind of given a feeling for what Worthing is like. If you've never been to Worthing before, or if you haven't even heard of Worthing before, you don't know anything about it, you could look through my photos that I took that day and you'd get an impression for what the place is like. And again, that's what I really want to be doing. And the more and more I do that, the better and better at that I'm going to get. I'm going to get better at telling stories through my photography. My photos are just going to eventually look better and be more interesting. There's a famous quote, I think it might have been Michael Jordan, or if it wasn't Michael Jordan, I think it might have been a golfer, but it was certainly a sports star. And I think it was in response to an interview he was given where people were kind of just making out that he was just lucky, essentially, lucky to get all these shots that he was getting. And his response was, the more I practice, the luckier I get. And it is so true, not just in sport, but obviously in photography as well. And the more and more and more you go out and take photos, the more you're going to take great shots. In street photography, you do need an element of luck because you can't control what happens on the streets. You need interesting things to happen in front of you. But again, the more and more you practice, the luckier you are going to get. Because if you're going out every day, one day out of 300 or whatever, something truly amazing is going to happen. So if you're really serious about photography and wanting to really, really improve and get better, and this certainly applies to street photography more than any other, I think, but just make the effort to go out as much as you can. If not every day, then certainly most days. And like I keep saying, I'm getting so much inspiration now. And I'm more excited about my photography than I have been in quite some time. So I'm gonna go take some photos now. But also, don't worry, I am not scrapping my landscape photography. Now that I'm back in Carlisle, I'll be at the Lake District very soon, and I'll be doing landscape photography in the Lake District very, very soon. But I also want to apply the same technique to my landscape photography as well. When I go off to the Lake District for a day, I want to tell the story of that day. I don't just want to climb to the summit of a hill, take a nice panoramic view. I want to tell the story from that day. So this isn't just my street photography, I'm going to be applying it to my landscape photography as well. So yeah, like I say, I'm going to go off and take some photos now. I hope you found this inspiring, but in any event, thank you very, very much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye.